1963, Yale University. A psychology experiment. You volunteer. The setup is simple. A teacher reads word pairs to a student in another room. When the student answers incorrectly, you administer an electric shock. Each wrong answer increases the voltage. The experiment begins. 15 volts. Slight shock. Wrong answer. The researcher in the lab coat, calm and authoritative, turns to you. The experiment requires that you continue. You hesitate. But you continue. 330 volts. The screaming stops. Only silence from the other room. The researcher looks at you. Please continue. 450 volts. The panel reads, XXX, danger, severe shock, past every moral instinct they believe defined them. You would have too. Not because you are cruel, not because you are broken, because you are human. And what makes ordinary people capable of atrocity is not hatred. It is not ideology. It is not even indifference. It is something far more ordinary, far more invisible, and operating in your life right now. The participant who couldn't stop Stanley Milgram did not set out to prove people were sadistic. What Milgram discovered was not that people enjoy inflicting pain. It was that they could be made to inflict it while visibly distressed, morally conflicted, and completely aware of what they were doing. They sweated. They stammered. They questioned the researcher. Some laughed nervously, a psychological response to unbearable tension. But when the man in the lab coat said, "You have no other choice, you must go on," most of them did. 65% delivered what they believed were lethal shocks. This was not 1930s Germany. This was New Haven, Connecticut. Yale students and community members, people who would describe themselves as moral, compassionate, independent thinkers. The variable was not culture, it was authority. The internal shift Milgram forced into view is this: your morality is not a fixed trait. It is conditional. Conditional on context. Conditional on who is giving the orders. Conditional on how the situation is framed. You believe your conscience would stop you, but your conscience is not some immovable force. It is a voice, and voices can be overridden by louder voices, especially when those voices wear lab coats, or uniforms, or carry institutional weight. The participants in Milgram's study were not broken people. They were normal people placed in a system designed to fragment their judgment and transfer responsibility upward. And that system worked, not because people are evil, because people are obedient. The fragmentation of responsibility. Evil does not require evil people. It requires a system that breaks a single immoral act into a sequence of small, individually justifiable steps. In the Milgram experiment, no one walked into the lab intending to torture someone. They agreed to help with a study on learning and memory. Reasonable, benign, prosocial. Then they were asked to read word pairs. Simple. Then to press a button when the learner answered incorrectly. Administrative. Then to increase the voltage incrementally. Procedural. Each step was trivial. Each step followed logically from the one before. And at no point did anyone announce, "You are now torturing a human being." Because if they had, almost everyone would have refused. This is how atrocity scales. Hannah Arendt observed this during the trial of Adolf Eichmann. She expected to find a monster. What she found was a bureaucrat. A man who coordinated train schedules, who optimized logistics, who never personally killed anyone. Eichmann did not see himself as a murderer. He saw himself as a competent administrator solving a complex logistical problem. The problem happened to be the transportation of millions of people to their deaths, but that was not how the task was framed to him, or how he framed it to himself. He was following orders, doing his job, ensuring the system ran efficiently. This is the fragmentation of responsibility. When a task is divided into small enough components, no individual feels accountable for the outcome. The person who writes the policy is not the person who enforces it. The person who builds the infrastructure is not the person who uses it. The person who presses the button is just following the protocol. And so everyone is complicit. And no one is guilty. You see this operating everywhere. In corporations where harmful decisions are made by committee so no single person can be blamed. In governments where policy is so layered that accountability dissolves into bureaucracy. In social systems where cruelty is distributed across so many actors that it becomes invisible. The internal shift is recognizing that "I was just doing my job" is not a defense against the mechanism. It is the mechanism. When you accept a role in a system without understanding the system's full function, you become an instrument. And instruments do not choose. They execute. Eichmann in Jerusalem, The Banality of Bureaucracy. Adolf Eichmann was not a psychopath. Clinical evaluations during his trial confirmed it. He showed no sadistic tendencies, no pathological hatred, no delight in suffering. He was, by every psychological measure, normal. This disturbed people more than if he had been a monster. Hannah Arendt coined the phrase "the banality of evil" to describe what she witnessed. Not evil as a demonic force, but evil as a failure of thought. Evil as the absence of imagination. Evil as the refusal to consider the human weight of your actions. Eichmann did not. His task was to manage the railway schedules that moved these units from one location to another. He was good at it. He took pride in his competence. When asked during his trial if he felt guilt, he said he would have felt guilt if he had not done his job well. This is the core insight Arendt forces into view. Eichmann was not an aberration. He was a prototype, the perfect functionary. A man who replaced moral judgment with procedural compliance, who outsourced his conscience to the system. It only asks whether the process is efficient. Competence without conscience is not neutral. It is the most dangerous form of participation, because it allows atrocity to function smoothly, to scale, to become systemized. The internal shift is this: effectiveness is not a virtue. It is a tool, and tools serve whoever wields them. If you pride yourself on being good at your job without ever questioning what your job serves, you are Eichmann. You are the person who makes the system run. And when the system is corrupt, your competence becomes its greatest asset. Why intelligence makes you more vulnerable, not less. You believe intelligence protects you from manipulation. That education inoculates you against compliance. That critical thinking makes you immune to the mechanisms that control ordinary people. The opposite is true. Intelligent people are not harder to manipulate. They are easier, because intelligence does not make you more moral. Why the situation is more complex than it appears. Why defiance would be naive or counterproductive. This is what psychologists call motivated reasoning. Your conclusion comes first. Your logic comes second. And the smarter you are, the more elaborate the logic you can build to support the conclusion you need to believe. During the Holocaust, some of the most educated people in Germany participated, not in spite of their education, because of it. Why every regime needs its philosophers, its scientists, its professors to legitimize what it does. Because the educated do not just comply. They explain why compliance is correct. And in doing so, they provide cover for everyone else. The internal shift is brutal. Your intelligence is not your defense, it is your vulnerability. It does not free you from conditioning. It serves your conditioning. It constructs the arguments that allow you to betray your values while believing you are upholding them. Your mind is a lawyer, and it will defend whatever position you need it to defend. The smarter you are, the better the defense. Which means the question is not whether you are intelligent enough to resist. The question is whether you are humble enough to recognize when your intelligence is being used against you.